And now I am very happy to turn the service over for our message to my friend MJ. And we are thrilled that you are here with us, Mary Jose. And the topic I gave for her today was the courage of immigrants. If you viewed that video, what courage that takes, you would have to be absolutely in danger of your life for you and your children to make that kind of journey. People don't just get up and say, oh, I think I'll go to America. So keep that in mind, and she will talk to us and share with us, and then we will have a time for questions and some little discussion afterwards. But thank you, thank you, thank you for being here.
Of course, thank you for inviting us and so happy to be here again. Thank you for being flexible as Stephanie and Baby are on their journey to recovery. So very nice to meet you all. My name is MJ Espinoza or Mary Jose, and I am the Director of Strategic Planning at Carolina Migrant Network. And so within that role, I do a lot of supporting our organizing work and also just strategic planning in terms of what we should do, how we respond to the moment that we're in. Um, as many of you know, Carolina Migrant Network is a nonprofit organization based here in Charlotte, and we provide free legal representation to people who are either in detention or deportation proceedings, not only in the Carolinas, but throughout the state. And so we do have clients kind of throughout the South. We also have folks that are clients that are trans and LGBTQ. So we really just try to support whoever we can that calls on us when they need it. We have two staff attorneys that are wonderful, and so they have handled a bunch of our casework. And most recently, over the last few years, we've kind of felt the need to develop our advocacy and organizing program to respond and support the families kind of in a more holistic way. So that is a little bit about our organization. We're turning 6 this year, so we're still um, fairly young, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, but it feels like a big milestone to reach. And I wanted to share a little bit about how I came into the work. So I came into the work, I started doing youth organizing work when I was in high school. I turned 31 this year, so about 15, 16 years ago now, which feels like a while. And in high school, I went to a social justice camp. It was called Anytown, and I met a bunch of other youth that had similar families to mine. So I grew up in a mixed status family, and it was kind of my first time talking about that with folks. And so what that just means is that some, folks in my family, some folks were U.S. citizens, some folks were not. And getting to talk to people that understood what that felt like was kind of life-changing for me. And from there, we decided to make a youth group. And that youth group was based on immigrant rights advocacy. And so we did things like marches and rallies and planned events like that. And that's kind of how I started getting involved into this world and have really just stayed connected in one way or another because it is something that is so personal to me and something that I carry so close to my heart. So, of course, journey has landed me here. I met Stefania about 15 years ago when I helped co-found that youth group. And so it's just been really wonderful to see all the things that are happening. As many of you know, in North Carolina, we had two anti-immigrant bills pass just a couple of weeks ago that our governor did veto. But unfortunately, the veto has been overridden for one of those bills as of this moment. And so, even though I feel like we are facing all this uncertainty, right? And we're seeing kind of this attack on immigrants, um, just in the federal sense, we're also facing kind of challenges within our own state that I think are important to know. And so I do think that there is a lot of work to be done, but I think that we have been very grateful in seeing the support of community members. We started at the beginning of this year a hotline where community members that think that they saw ICE agents or suspect that someone was picked up can call in and report. And we work with a team of volunteers to dispatch them and then go verify if ICE is present at a location. And so That has been one of the big projects that we've done. We've also done Know Your Rights clinics with attorneys, where people from the immigrant communities can come and learn what their rights are, what they're, entitled to, and hear that directly from an attorney. And then our community organizer has also been planning what are POAs, or power of attorney clinics. And so a power of attorney, in case folks might not know, is just a document that says, if I leave, this is who I want to delegate not responsibility, but like this is who I want to delegate power essentially over my assets, or, whatever the case may be. And so these are some of the things that we've been doing on our end. As I'm sure you all know, it has been just challenging. There's been so many changes happening under this administration. And so we're just trying to really pivot and see where folks need us the most. And so I do think that that is something that has come up and comes up in these moments, is that we want to help, and what people need from us changes drastically, right? So another example is as we all know, right, the hurricane hit Western North Carolina really hard. We collaborated with a lot of organizations to provide support and goods to families across Western North Carolina. So we really do a lot of work to support the immigrant communities in many different aspects. But primarily as an organization, right, our focus is the legal advocacy work. And so, but we understand and know that folks need more to thrive, and we want to try and provide and support in finding that as much as we can. So, um, a longer blurb about me and the organization, but happy to be here. Definitely happy to hear any questions from you all.
Um, Earlier this week, I sent out a few things to think about, and I'm sure you have other questions that you have thought of that you want to ask. But some of the questions that I had sent out for thought to think about this week were: how can communities, advocates, and individuals better prepare for and respond to the impacts of ICE raids? How do ICE raids affect the mental and physical health of immigrant communities, especially the children, regardless of their status? How should sensitive locations like schools, hospitals, and places of worship be considered in relation to ICE? And I have a big problem personally with the CMS policy now allowing ICE to actually come into the building. What responsibilities do employers have regarding their employees' status in ICE raids? ICE raids are not adhering to due process and constitutional rights. Officers do not have the required warrants, and they are appearing masked. You cannot see their faces. The
Mm.
ACLU highlights concerns that Fourth Amendment violations and due process are being severely violated. And what can we do, and how can we support organizations like Carolina Migrant Network in the work you are doing? And those are just the questions I had thought of earlier this week. We'll just open it up, those questions or any other questions you may have.
Caroline, you said that the last thing you said, if I remember, I was writing notes, that you were looking for other ways to also help out the immigrants in different areas. What other areas are you looking to help them out in besides what you're doing already? MJ, could you hear me? Oh, there you go.
Yes, sorry. It wasn't letting me unmute. I'm sorry. So I do think that one of the things that we are looking for, that have been looking to build, is kind of building not a coalition, but almost a group. And so, a few months ago, we were really worried that we were going to see large scale ICE raids. Thankfully, up to this point, we haven't. But I think that one of the things is that what I think, sorry, I got something stuck in my throat. Give me 1 second, I'm gonna grab water.
It's okay.
Does it seem like the ice raids have slowed down? Does it? No, I
I don't
haven't.
think so.
No.
They're not as televised as much.
Oh, that's probably what it
Yeah,
is.
I'm back. Sorry,
I think
y'all. I was.
I think they're regrouping is what I think. I
Mm.
think they've got this new infusion of cash from the big ugly bill, and they're recruiting. They're using
Oh,
entertainers to recruit. Well, washed up entertainers to recruit. Um,
what?
yeah, they are. They're using Dean Cain, who used to be a Superman or whatever. They're using washed up entertainers to commute. I mean, to promote. And they're lower. I think they lowered the age. MJ, you probably can speak more to that, but they lowered the age of for people who could join. They're letting teenagers join ICE. I don't
And they
know what
waive
that's
any
all
visa
about, but
requirements.
yeah,
So
Yeah, and
anyone, pretty much anyone could join. If you want to be mean to people and be aggressive, this is the spot for you.
I will
yeah,
clarify that and say if you are a low life person, you can join.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
and they're offering and marketing it with a lot of sorry, my voice still sounds weird, but they're offering and marketing it with a lot of like incentives, right? And so there's been a lot of critique that they're offering pay and bonuses and things like that that we don't even provide for teachers and educators. And in many states like our state, right, these people who are they're trying to hire would make more money than even our educators do. And so but yes, as a result of the funding from the big ugly bill, right, there's going to be an infusion of millions of dollars that are going to be granted over to immigration to really like build up their and sturdy their infrastructure. But yes, we've still been seeing that there's been activity of focus on specific individuals. So pickup of individuals has not stopped at all. It's been happening pretty consistently through the beginning of the year. There were, a few weeks ago, we were getting, I think we got like 135 calls in 1 week of just people being picked up. And so it hasn't stopped. I do think that it's not being covered because these tend to be individuals versus groups of people. But I'm not sure if y'all saw in the news that there was about a month ago, I think, in Kings Mountain, there was a workplace raid that
Right.
happened. And so we did get a lot of calls about that, and obviously several families were impacted. Um, I think in terms to answer your question, Ashanti, of what kind of gaps we see is that we know that there is a huge amount of providers that help just community in general, right? That can also help immigrant communities. One of our goals at the beginning of this year was to really kind of build and set up this infrastructure that if someone comes to us for legal services, then we can connect them to someone that does has a food pantry or gives clothing or gives baby clothes and diapers, right? So that's one of the things that we currently don't do, but having a more robust kind of referral type program.
Hmm.
And so we do know some of the organizations, we've worked with, their name escapes me at the moment, but they do a lot of mental health support, specifically for immigrants and Latinx communities. But they're a wonderful organization. I know we've been working for them for several months at least on different issues like contacting electeds and doing those things in a nonpartisan way. Um, but I think perhaps having that infrastructure in place has been challenging. And I think it's been challenging just because, a lot of funding has been cut for organizations. Folks are also everyone's kind of like, trying to respond to the moment. Um, but I would say that that's probably one of the things. And um, I do think that um, yeah, I just feel like folks, another thing that we've talked about is um, previously we worked with an organization who would help us with an immigrant solidarity fund. Unfortunately, due to changes in funding, they pretty much don't exist anymore. And so they would help us grant stipends to families who or people who were undocumented of like, $600, whatever it was. And that would sometimes help people make rent and make a difference between being homeless or, having to find a new place to live or eat or whatever the case might be. And so, I think that that's another big gap that we're seeing at the moment is that when someone gets detained, typically, right, what we have seen is that it's people who are kind of the head of household. And so then you don't have income coming into the family, right? You might not have someone who's driving. You people can't work, typically moms stay at home with the kids. And so we are seeing that folks kind of in addition to everything that's happening, right, meaning legal representation and all of that, folks just need to find the means to survive. And that is something that we don't currently provide that we're trying to figure out. If we can be the host or we can, co-host with some organizations. And I know that that's been something that we've been trying to figure out for a while now, but I think in terms of gaps, those are what I would say are currently gaps within what we can provide, right? And also just understanding that our team is fairly small. I think there's 10 of us, right? But half of that is allocated to legal, and then the remaining 5 are going to be your folks that do like operations and also the advocacy work. So perhaps those are the biggest challenges.
So you're trying to be, it sounds like you want to be a resource center to have a number of things that you work on to cover everything that they need.
Yes, and if we can't be the resource center, I think that would be fine if we could just kind of find ways
To
to
connect them.
connect folks, right? So more of a referral. And I think that um just being honest with y'all, our attorneys, one of our attorneys, I think has like 200 cases. And so it's just our team is I
Overwhelmed.
think we're a little overwhelmed in this moment. And I think we're trying to find that balance between when we do this work, right? That's personal to a lot of us, that we love and care for and are passionate about, also finding the balance to ensuring that we are taking care of ourselves as well. And so I do think that, I to Ryan's point, right? People are still getting picked up every day. We get calls every day of people that need support for legal services, and we have a huge waiting list that just keeps growing. And so I do think that if we could just refer folks or have, just know organizations that can support these folks in the other ways that we can't, that would be incredible for us. And again, we do have some of that information. I think that sometimes it just feels like folks just need so much, and it's not, again, everyone's scrambling, I think, with the resources
Yeah.
that they have. So
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
a couple of things. One is I've read about issues where the immigration court is setting up people by dismissing charges, which then, if they have an asylum application in place and the court dismisses it, then they have no status at all, and then ICE is waiting for them outside of immigration court. So,
Wow.
are you recommending that people not show up for their hearing? Is that just a dangerous place to do if you have a mandated reporting?
that's a great question. So yes, we have seen and heard that people have been getting picked up after court. And we've also seen similar at immigration court. So people will go in for the regular check-ins, and what we've been seeing is that when they leave the building, they get picked up. And so we are not recommending that people don't go to court. What we're saying is that if available, to request a virtual court hearing. For some folks, that is an option, but it might not be for everyone. So we're saying if it is an option for you to do that in consultance with your legal representation. But that's what we've been telling folks that have asked us about it. Because yeah, it's really scary. And we've gotten calls over the last few weeks. We haven't heard or haven't been contacted, at least, that there have been people picked up at immigration court. But I do know for sure that it has happened both at the court in downtown Charlotte and at immigration court. So that's what we've been recommending to folks, is if you are able to request a virtual hearing, to do that, just because it feels safer, and you can do it from somewhere safe with your attorney or whoever's representing you.
Right. So I also I worked with Pisco Legal in Asheville for a while, and they have a network of 200 pro bono attorneys that volunteer to help people who are indigenous or people who also can't afford it, legal help. Is there any effort like that in Charlotte to find pro bono attorneys or a network of attorneys that can step in and help you guys out?
Yeah, so I will say, so we've been building really good relationships with a couple of law firms here around the power of attorney clinics that we've been doing. Our legal team is also trying to set up, I think currently a bond network, which
Mhm.
would be kind of a network of attorneys that can, pro se or pro bono, um, help to file for bond for a lot of these immigration cases. And what that basically means is that folks, if you can make bail or bond, right, then they can release you temporarily. It's not always granted, and in fact, it has become harder to grant. But there are some cases that the judge might say yes, and then folks can be returned with their family for the time being. So we've been trying to work on that. I know our legal team has been working very hard to set that up with attorneys in the area, but I'm not quite sure where that process is at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
I was going to ask about food pantries. There was a time when food pantries asked for ID and all of this stuff. Is that better now, or they are people finding that they can go to food pantries and be given food?
I am not quite sure. I remember when I was growing up, my family went to a food pantry and I used to volunteer at food pantries. And I do remember them having like ID, like asking for ID sometimes. I'm not quite sure at the moment. I haven't directly spoken to anyone who has needed food of this moment. And I know prior to that, me kind of coming on board full time, there were kind of one-on-one situations where folks had specific needs that we would just, if we had the funding available, buy things and provide it to the families directly since they were already in touch with us. So I know that we did do that. But I think it really depends on the pantry that you go to. I know a lot of places do ask ID, and I know for some folks, even if they're undocumented, might have like a consular ID or a
Yeah.
passport, and typically those are documents are okay to show, and are accepted at places. So I would say that I think it depends on the pantry, and some of them again might be more flexible in terms of what identification they can accept.
We started a food pantry and it got so large, we had to move it from the church and we moved it into another area. And then we had to finally move it to North Charlotte, which became just too far. Nobody could volunteer because nobody lives up that way. But we are still support them at heart, and I take food once in a while to them. But they ask no questions, and that's always been their motto. You want food, just come to the door, and I will send you that information because that is,
That would be incredible.
and they will give you bags of things and then ask, is there something specific? And if you say, I need adult diapers, they will get adult diapers for you because that's been a need that they originally didn't think to have, or baby diapers or whatever. So I will give you that information so that you can pass it on.
That would be wonderful. I know we would definitely appreciate having that on hand, and
Okay.
I will definitely gladly share that with the rest of the team and even our
Okay.
legal team that does intake because I know they sometimes are the ones that get the
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So could you talk a little bit about funding? How is the migrant network funded?
I was thinking that
I'm
too.
assuming there's no federal funds.
Yes, that is correct. So we've tried really hard not to get any federal funds. So it mostly is through kind of like private foundations, right? So we have grants from a lot of North Carolina-based foundations and grants. I will say one of the grants that we had um, was kind of a was re-granted through an organization, but those monies did come from I think a larger I think state source, and so and that was about 40% of our legal team's funding, and that has been cut. So
Yeah.
over the next few months, we'll stop receiving those funds, and but typically, we are funded in a large part by private foundations, and then we do have a good chunk. I don't know exact percentages from individual donors. And so, folks that give $5 here and there or whatever it may be, like those do add up. And so what we've seen is over the since the beginning of the year, pretty much, right? Since the change in administration, we've received a pretty steady, I think, $1,500 to $2,000 monthly from just individual giving.
Wow.
And I feel like that might not sound like a ton, but it definitely adds up. And that, we use every single bit of that to fund the work that we do. And so, but currently we did see, a big cut in our funding just due to some changes in administration. And it does impact our legal team, but thankfully, we're fine. We're set for this year. And we're just trying to, figure out, I think, how the next year will look.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you all saw, but we did, I'll do a shameless plug. We did launch our summer fundraiser. And so definitely happy to share those links over for folks just to share if you can. If you can't give, it's fine. It's understandable. But just to share and get the word out, I feel like, again, right, I think just there's so many organizations that are being impacted right now by funding cuts. And so definitely so many good organizations that do wonderful work are being impacted. But as I mentioned, thankfully we're solid, but we have seen a little bit of funding changes. But I also am so grateful for Stefania and our co-director Becca, who kind of were planning right in advance, and we're very careful about what funding they applied for.
If you can send me
Okay.
anything that I can put in the newsletter of needs that you have, support we can give, whether it's an Amazon wish list or funding or money, send it to me and I'll be sure it's in our weekly newsletter this week so that
Yes,
people are aware of
wonderful.
this.
Thank you. Yes, I'll email some of that over. And I also will be happy to email kind of the information that we distribute. So we do have a Know Your Rights one pager, which is
Okay.
it's pretty, it's a graphic. Our communications staff member worked on it. And we tend to give that out to folks too. So happy to do that. And I'll
Please
also
do.
share, our website has a walkthrough instructions step by step on how to locate your loved one if they're taken or picked up by immigration. It has links and screen pictures or screen grabs so you can see what that looks like, along with other Know Your Rights resources. So I will definitely be sending those over.
Thank you very much.
I know that school is about to start in a couple of weeks, and it's going to be very stressful and scary for a lot of people, and particularly in the Latino community. Um, as a matter of fact, one of the apartment complexes near my area where I live, they had a drive to give school supplies, and in the leasing office, they were just giving free school supplies. Do you have any programs that we might be able to participate in to help alleviate the stress? And because it's going to be scary in the next couple of weeks when kids go back to school. And also, we downloaded, I think we all did, but downloaded the Ice Block app. You were mentioning
Yes.
that you had a system where we could call in, but also, could you tell me about any other programs that we could help? And if we see ICE, should we contact you or the Ice Block app or anything like that? Because I'm in a corridor of Central Avenue, Eastway area, so maybe you can tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, those are great questions. So I know for school, in the past, we have done back to school fundraisers. This year, just because our internal capacity has shifted with the Stefania being out, I am not quite sure if we're leading anything. I'm sure we'll be plugging into something. We're doing some back to school fairs, but I can definitely provide the information for our bridge, who would be great to support. They work a lot with immigrant communities from across the world. And so they work directly with newly arrived families, and its school children. And so they do after school programming. And they would be a great resource in terms of like preparing for back to school. I think someone mentioned it, but in CMS, we've kind of had a battle around what they'll allow us to share in terms of know your rights information and stuff like that with families. So, that is a little challenging. What I will say is I am definitely happy to share our hotline with you all. So that is the number that you would call in case you believe you spotted ICE, you see something suspicious, you're not really quite sure. We've heard lots of folks having the ICE Block app. And so, what we do is we have what we call the verifiers, or we call them our amigos en resistencia, friends in resistance. And when we get a call or field a call through our hotline, we send a signal chat to a group of volunteers that have gone through training, and then they can dispatch to the site and verify whether or not ICE is present. If we do get a report that's verified, what we'll then do is post using a photo, a timestamp, and a location. And then we blast that across our Facebook, Instagram, all the social medias, and a WhatsApp channel that we also have with, I think, several hundred or thousands of members in the Charlotte area. So we do have those trainings. We have some scheduled over the next few weeks. That's always something, and I can send that information to you all via email as well as the hotline information. And the hotline, if it turns out to be nothing, we are perfectly fine with getting those calls. It's better. What is it? It's better to be safe than sorry. And so, and there have been calls that we get that do turn out to be ICE operations or bigger operations. So, I will also share that via email, and we have that in a graphic form that you all can share out as well.
I have heard, and maybe you can say if this is true or urban rumor, that when ICE has shown up at a couple places, so many, and I hate to say this, white people showed up with cameras videoing that they left. Do
Oh,
you have
gee.
evidence that that's worked?
I will say, so I know under what we call Trump 1.0, so the first Trump administration, yeah, absolutely, yes. I saw that work more than times than I can count. Under this current Trump 2.0 is what we're calling it, this current administration, we're seeing that it's not quite the same. So although we do have, and our verifiers, all of them are incredible, but they'll show up and they ask questions, they start recording. We have seen that doesn't deter agents as much as it used to, right? There seems to be almost this, they feel more emboldened, right? They kind of stand. I know I did personally a call where I went to see a report, and there was a confirmed ICE agent there, and he was like waving and smiling at me from his vehicle. And so I do think there's a little bit of difference, but I will say that if enough people show up, they will leave because they don't want to be typically, right? The majority of them will not want to be caught on camera doing what they're doing.
That's why they're
And
masked. That's why they're covered.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's why they're masked.
yeah, that's why. And the other part is what we tell people is, I mean, these are people that probably live in our neighborhood, right? They live with us.
Mhm.
So they also don't want to be caught on camera because then we know who they are. And so I will say this year, it's been half and half, right? Sometimes we show up and then they see like another car pull up and then they do
Oh,
leave.
gee.
And so in other situations, they also have not left, and they'll actually, wave and make fun. So, but what we tell verifiers is, for example, if there's a situation, and I grew up on Central and near Central and Sharon Amity. So if we get a call about Central and Sharon Amity and someone shows up, they'll often be like, hey, would love backup. And then someone else can show up. And so once you have 2-3 people, right, we have had agents that like will leave, or suspicious vehicles that'll leave. So I do think it helps. I don't think it hurts. But unfortunately, due to the climate that we're in, I do think that it's not, the agents don't feel as scared as they might have, the last administration.
No, they're very emboldened. Well, before we have our closing, and we can continue this after our closing, we have a time called After the Amen. And when it's a hot topic like this, we just keep talking. But we proposed this week, thank you to Tom Blanford for writing this, that we pass a declaration, a proposal in support of our immigrant community. And if you would put it on the screen, Tom will read it for us, and then we'll take a vote.
Wedgewood believes that all immigrants, regardless of their status, deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. We condemn the use of dehumanizing language such as alien or illegal. We reject the deployment of paramilitary mass police forces with limited training and accountability that terrorize our immigrant communities. We strongly oppose the racist targeting of individuals based on their skin color or language. Wedgewood calls on our political representatives to redirect funds from militarizing the border to be used to increase the staffing of immigration courts and lawyers. This will allow every individual to be afforded the constitutional right to challenge their detention before a judge in a timely fashion. We consider seizing of individuals and imprisoning them without trial in foreign or domestic concentration camps to be a criminal act and call for those responsible to be prosecuted. We condemn the deportation of individuals to countries that are suffering from war, starvation, or rampant lawlessness. We advocate for a path to citizenship for the millions of immigrants living and working in the United States.